There is a voice you listen to. And I don't have to know you to know that you listen to that voice a lot. It influences you in almost everything you do, from the time you wake up until the time you go to bed. And even then, it's as if that voice can't stop talking. You cannot get that voice to stop talking. It's as if that person has a mic in its hand and it's not letting go of it. It's there when you look in the mirror. It's there when you want to try something new. It's there when you have a decision to make. That voice is there when you replay every conversation you've had with someone and you are doubting yourself. And sometimes, just sometimes, that voice is kind. But for many of us, most of that time, that voice is critical. That voice is not kind. Sometimes it's like there are competing voices that are holding the mic. One that wants to give us truth and life abundant, and the other voice wants to take that away from us. My question for you is, which of those voices has the mic the most? Because whoever is holding your mic the most has a lot of influence on you and how you are seeing yourself, how you are having a relationship with God, and how you have a relationship with everyone else. And if we're not careful, the wrong voice can take hold of that mic. The wrong voice can take complete control. But here's the good news. You get to decide. You get to decide who can have that mic and who can keep that mic. You don't have to let the wrong voice hold on to that mic. You have the power to identify the voices, both negative and positive, and give it to the one who speaks truth and light into your heart. So today, that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about how do you recognize the voice that you want to hold the mic the most? How do you ensure that it's God's voice that's loudest in your mind? So over the last 2 Sundays, we've been looking at words. I've been calling it Words Matter. The first Sunday, we called it Watch Your Mouth, because we talked about how we are called to watch what we say. Our tongues, says James, the brother of Jesus, says our tongues have power because our words have power, that they can steer us. They're like a small thing, like a rudder of a ship. But like a rudder of a ship can control where the ship goes, our tongue can control us. And just like a bit in a horse's mouth can guide a horse in the right direction, our words can do the same thing. So this week, we're looking at what we say to ourselves, because that too navigates where we are going. That too dictates what we do in life and how we see ourselves in life and how we treat others in life. Sometimes, many times, we don't even pay attention to who is speaking in our mind. It's almost like a white noise. It's like background music. And sometimes the music is uplifting and joyful and we feel good. And sometimes that background music is a little bit depressing. And it makes us just want to stay inside and do nothing. We always hear joyful, uplifting background music when we go shopping, because that encourages us to stay and do more and spend more. And so I want you to be mindful of what background voice is in your mind. What is the one that is speaking to you the most? Because the problem arises when the voice that is there the most is keeping you from seeing yourself as made in the image of God. To put it in scriptural terms, the voice that is negative to you, the one that is not uplifting, is the one that is known as the deceiver. The deceiver is the one that doesn't want you to have a relationship with God. And those are words that sound like, you are not good enough, and you will never be good enough. The deceiver will say to you, God can't forgive what you did. You've gone too far this time. And the deceiver will say, you can't trust God. God has let you down in the past. You better take control now. The deceiver will say to you, you do not need God. And so we go along because some of us feel like we don't need God. Some of us have enough money. Some of us have enough wealth. Some of us have enough education. Things are going fairly well in our life that we believe the deceiver. And yet, for many of us, we're empty inside. We can see the first time that the deceiver held the mic in somebody's mind in the Garden of Eden. God had clearly instructed Adam. Eve had not even been created as yet. God had instructed Adam that he could eat from any tree except the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And this is what the serpent does. The serpent represents the deceiver. The serpent is challenging his trust in God, Adam's trust in God. The serpent is challenging God's intentions with Adam and Eve. The serpent has the mic in their mind, and the serpent asks Eve, did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden? See, the serpent asked the question of Eve, even though Adam was the one who heard the law, because Eve wasn't really created as yet. I wanted to emphasize that because we often hear about how Eve is the cause of the fall, and yet Adam was the one who got the instruction, and Adam was standing next to Eve when he got the instruction. So the serpent, the deceiver, has the mic, and the serpent says, did God really say you shall not eat from any tree in the garden? And Eve corrects the deceiver. Eve says, we may eat of the fruit of the garden, of the trees in the garden, but God said, you shall not eat of the fruit of the tree that is in the middle of the garden. But then Eve adds a little thing to it. Eve says, nor shall you touch it, or you shall die. And so in her mind, there's another thing that God has done, even though God didn't say that. God never said you should not touch it. God just said you shall not eat it. And then the deceiver says, you will not die, for God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. This is how the deceiver works. That person that has the mic in the mind that doesn't want us to have life abundant distorts God's truth and God's promises. The deceiver is saying you don't need God. You can be like God. This is deception. This is the person that has the wrong mic in their mind. This is the one that is saying power and enlightenment are all that you need. You do not need God. And the serpent is also saying that God is withholding something good from people, that they deserve something better, but God won't let them have it. The deceiver plays on our curiosity and our desire to be more like God, and it plays on our insecurities. And I still believe that the deceiver comes in multiple forms. It wants to take control of the mic. It wants to distort how you see yourself. It wants you to distance yourself from God. The other thing about this story that struck me is that Adam never says anything when Eve is told this. Adam, who heard the instruction, didn't stand up either. And I think that's another thing that the deceiver plays on. The deceiver plays on people who won't speak up. The deceiver plays on those who won't use their words for good. We talked about that last week. And so they give in. They give in to the deceiver's voice. They give in to the voice that is in their mind. This is a warning to us, I think, to be aware of who has the mic in our minds. And the good news is that you are in control. You do not have to let every voice in your head control you. Because we do have those multiple voices in our heads. We do have the one saying, oh, we don't need God. We do have the one that chooses to keep us silent when we should speak up. So how do we start? By identifying the voices in our head and which one is speaking to us. Well, I think Marg read that scripture today. That is a good place to start. It was you who formed me, God. I am made by you, God. You made my inner parts. You knit me together in my mother's womb. And what do I do because of that? I praise you, for I am fearfully and I am wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works, God, and if you created me, then I am wonderful too. That I know very well. That's just an excerpt of Psalm 139. I'm going to invite you to go home and read the entirety of Psalm 139 because it clearly states that you are fully known by God in such a beautiful and powerful way. The author is marveling at how God knows every thought, sees every action, and even predicts every word that is spoken. The author begins, "Oh Lord, you searched me and known me. You know when I sit down, you know when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from far away." That can be a bit scary too. I don't know if I want God to know all my thoughts. I don't know if I want God to thoroughly search me up and down. To be known fully is to be vulnerable. And the psalmist admits in Psalm 139 that he feels comfortable knowing that God knows him fully, but he also feels a bit under siege. But to be fully known like that and still to be fully loved is a marvelous thing. And so at the beginning and end of this psalm, the psalmist says, "Examine my heart. Let me keep hearing your voice so that I can go down the wise path." And the wise path for the psalmist is that we turn our thoughts, that voice in our head, to God to be able to listen to our Creator. Because let's be honest, we do have negative thoughts. We all have negative thoughts. And for some of us, the negative thoughts are probably running the show. And you may not realize it. You may not realize that those negative thoughts are the ones that have the mic in your mind. But think about the little comments you replay over and over again. Think about the opinions of others you obsess over. I rarely go home and obsess about how somebody gave me a compliment. I don't go it over and over in my head. I can get 5 compliments and 1 criticism, and that's the thing I'll replay in my head. What about the fears that you let simmer in your head? All these things have the mic in our mind, and they're shaping our lives. All these things are the ones that are steering how we see ourselves, how we treat others, and how we even relate to God. There's a saying that goes, "Watch your thoughts, they become your words. Watch your words, they become your actions. Watch your actions, they become your habits. Watch your habits, they become your character. And watch your character, it could become your destiny." Starting from your thoughts. That's a scary thing. But we have control of the one who has the mic in our mind. We have control. Philippians 4 says to us, "I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me." That verse emphasizes that we can rely on Christ for all strength in all circumstances, that we can turn to God and say, "Take away those negative thoughts that tell me I do not deserve life abundant." Because some thoughts need to be shown the door immediately. And other thoughts, well, we can invite them in, pull out a chair, and let them sit for a while. But how do you know the difference? How do you know what thoughts you're called to invite in? How do you know what thoughts you want to give the mic to? And that's where Philippians comes in for me. Because Paul, the Apostle Paul, gives us what I think is a filter. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is pleasing, whatever is commendable, if there is excellence in anything, if there's anything worthy of praise, think about these things. I love that. When we have thoughts running through our minds, we can put them through this little filter. We can decide what we want to siphon off and what we want to fill our mind. It's a guide for us. It's like a checklist for us. Is the thing that's holding the mic saying something true to me? Is it telling me that I have a creator who loves me and knows me by name? Because truth is a good starting point. Truth is the foundation of everything that is good and godly. Because so much of what fills our minds is not truth. It's the lie that you believe about yourself that I will never be good enough. It's a twisted perception you have about someone else. Or maybe you're thinking they're probably judging me. Or it's a flat out lie that the deceiver says, you'll only be happy if you are equal to God. You'll only be happy if you're good looking like this person. You'll only be happy if you're rich. You'll only be happy if you're perfect. And the problem is, the longer that lie lingers in your mind, the longer that it becomes to sound like it is the truth. Paul tells us to think about things that are honorable. Honorable is whatever is pleasing to God. Honorable are things that lift up others and yourself, made in the image of God. Those are things that are worthy to hold on to, things that elevate your perspective of others. It's so easy to focus on resentment. It's so easy to focus on jealousy or criticism, but those do not reflect the life that God has called us to. My question for you then, is the one with the mic dragging you down, or is it lifting you up? Honorable thoughts are the ones that have integrity, have dignity, and respect. They're the kind of thoughts that tell you that you see people and people see you in the way that God sees you. Build up, don't tear down. Paul says to focus on what is just. Just is about fairness. Just is about doing what is right. Just is about reflecting God's heart for people. And this one can be a little convicting because sometimes our thoughts are not fair. Sometimes we are quick to judge. Sometimes we do want to put a label on people without knowing their story. Or sometimes we think the worst about someone's motives. And if we are doing that to them, then they're probably doing that to us. But God calls us to think differently. To think justly means to see people through the lens of grace and fairness. So you can ask yourself, am I thinking about this situation in a just manner? Paul then puts a lot into the others. Is it pure? Is it pleasing? Is it commendable? All these things. Does it bring joy instead of conflict and chaos? Is it worthy of admiration? Not envy, but admiration. Do you see something good in somebody that you want to tell them about? Does somebody see something good in you? My question as you look at this is, do you see the voice that's holding the mic in your mind? What are you feeding your mind? Are you feeding your mind thoughts that reflect this? Are you feeding your mind thoughts that reflect the deceiver? Then nudge, nudge, let me just twist that truth so that it sounds truthful, but it's not really, it's a lie. Paul says to think about things that are excellent and praiseworthy. It's about setting your mind on things that inspires you with worship and gratitude and joy. And if you're not sure what's worthy of praise, then think about things that you can give gratitude for. Think about all the ways God has blessed you. Think about God's goodness. Think about God's faithfulness. Think about God's love. Because when you focus on these things, your perspective will change. And the person that has the mic in your mind shifts too. When you give God the mic in your mind, something amazing happens. God's truth becomes the loudest voice. God's love drowns out the lies, and God's peace silences the chaos. This week, I invite you to be aware of your thoughts. Don't let them just be background music in your mind. Think about who's holding the mic. If it helps, imagine a little person holding the mic in your mind and talking. And let God be the one who holds the mic. Let God's voice be the one that defines you. And when you hear God's truth, let it be a mic drop moment for you that takes over everything else. Because you were made in God's image. God knows your inner thoughts, and God still loves you. And that is the best voice to hear. Amen.